Hi, I'm Colin, and I'm going to be talking today about the AP Physics C Mechanics mock test strategy and review course. For those of you who aren't familiar, AP Physics C is the calculus version of AP Physics that College Board offers. It's broken up into mechanics, which is primarily motion and forces and such like that, and then the electricity side of it, which is specifically electricity and magnetism. Today, I'm just going to talk about the mechanics portion of it. Test breaks up as follows into the following subjects. So there's kinematics, which is motion, Newton's laws of motion, which is forces, and Newton's laws, work, energy, and power, which is all the different forms of energy, systems of particles and linear momentum, which is not just linear momentum, but also center of mass and impulse as well. There's also rotational motion, which is different than uniform circular motion, which is covered in Newton's laws of motion portion. And then also as well as oscillations, which is simple harmonic motion, and then gravitation, which is motion relating to universal gravitation. So these are the subjects that are covered on the AP Physics C Mechanic test. As part of the mock test review, we will be going through and reviewing all these topics to make sure that each of the students has a solid conceptual understanding of all of these. There's a lot of things that can be very solid at the beginning of the year when you go through them, but then by the end of the year, maybe there's little tiny conceptual things that have slipped out of your mind or whatever. And so we're going to go through these and make sure that that part is solid as well. The other part of the course is going through and making sure that students know how to answer Physics C questions the way that Physics C graders are going to expect them to answer it. So to kind of give you an idea of how that would go, here is a AP Physics C Mechanics question. So we can see here that they're asking a momentum and impulse question here. So here we have two carts that are going to collide over a period of, looks like 0.16 seconds. And then momentum is transferred in this collision, and then the carts will have a new velocities afterwards. Okay, so students would be expected to digest that information in a number of ways. So we see here we have a graph. So students would be expected to be able to tell from that graph, okay, so here is force versus time. Be able to tell, okay, so that's the forces shown here are all negative. That means that the forces are acting in a negative direction. They would be expected to be able to look at this image here and see, okay, if that's the forces are acting on cart one, as it says in the text, then that means that this graph should match up with what you see there. We also see that they'd be asked to analyze it in equation form. We're given here as an equation that was used to fit the curve. So like I said, Physics C is a calculus-based physics course, and so students would be expected to have that strong knowledge of calculus related topics here. Here in this equation, it's a fairly simple equation, so we can analyze that using an integral here. So the first part here says, using integral calculus, like I just said, calculate the total impulse delivered to cart one during the collision. So then we would use this. This one would just be a power rule integral, and so we'd be able to do that, plug in the limits and find that. And then after we've gone through that, we'll make sure that each of the students understands how these tests are graded. So here we can see the graded version of that, because really when you're talking about these tests, it's not necessarily making sure that you get the correct answer, but making sure that you get all of the points. It's possible to get the correct answer without getting all the points, because what they are looking for when they grade these is, have you shown that you understand the most important principles that they're looking for you to understand to solve the problem. Now, if you're able to get to the correct answer, then you usually get all the points, but not always. So here we have, in this case, you need to be able to set up the integral correctly, knowing that the impulse, which is what they asked you to solve for, is equal to the integral of force over time. That would be 1 point. Setting up the correct limits of integration. In this case, they say from 0 to 0.16 seconds. would get you another point, and then actually getting the correct answer would be for the last point. So in this case, when you're just solving for a number, it's a little more straightforward, but sometimes it can be misleading if you're just trying to solve for the answer instead of being very careful to show that you understand all of the principles necessary to solve the problem. Now, we move on here to B. So B says, calculate the speed of cart 1 after the collision. So to do that, we would have to know the impulse, which we just calculated on the last part. And we were then able to see that the impulse was about 2 Newton seconds, which would mean that the total momentum of the cart would change by 2 Newton seconds or kilogram meter seconds, and therefore the cart is going to move backwards. Okay, so we would be able to answer this question. Okay, the cart is going to be moving to the left because the final value for the momentum would be negative. And if we were going through this in class, students would have the opportunity to answer this question on their own, and then we would go through and make sure that their answers are sufficient in order to get all the points. And then that gives the students an opportunity as they see the test being graded themselves. They understand how these are going to be graded for them when they answer the test for real, and they can make sure that when they're in the real thing, they're answering it sufficiently to get all the points. Okay, so you can see we don't have time to go through all of these, but I hope you can understand how we would go through and analyze these questions and make sure that students really understand the topics as well as understand how to answer these Physics C questions in a way that would get them all the test points. So as far as what we offer, there's a several-week course where we go through and make sure we hit all these physics topics and expand on them as a group class as well as individual one-on-one classes. And these are all available through 7EDU. So please feel free to contact our operations, and I would be glad to walk through these courses with you all individually or in a group setting, whatever works best for you. Thanks.